Good evening. So the creator God is the creator God is the creator God. And when you look at these different religions, I'm arguing with a guy who's a Muslim. And he's going on about how, Allah is the creator that created all things, right? And, I'm arguing from a Christian perspective that, Jesus was the Logos because that's what it says in the story. And I'm also arguing from the perspective that all of the prophets in the Bible were prophets of Israel. They weren't prophets of Islam because they were Israelites. They were part of a tribe, and so they were prophesying for their tribe. It's a tribal religion. And this is where you get into that idea of like, well, is the God of Israel the God of everybody, or is it just the God of Israel? The answer to that question is that the God of Israel is God as defined by the Israelites. It's God as mythologized by the Israelites. And by the Greeks, they mythologized God a different way. And the Egyptians mythologized God a different way. That does not mean that there is not a God. I'm not saying there's not a creator. There is a creator of the universe. Okay? And it was mythologized in different ways by different people. And so when you go around saying that all these prophets of the Israelites are really prophets of Islam, that's a lie. They weren't prophets of Islam. They were not prophets of Moses, Jacob, Jesus, David. None of them were prophets of Islam. They were all Israelites. It's a story about Israelites, written by Israelites, about their ideas of God. Okay? That's what you have to understand. This is why I'm a deist, basically. Because I understand that different people basically worship the same God in their own religion. The only thing that the Jews really did differently was they said that you mustn't make it into an idol. You cannot depict it as an idol. You cannot depict it as an image. That was the thing that made their religion different. They had basically the same God. And so I'm arguing with this guy, and I'm trying to get him to admit that the Egyptians worshipped a creator God, that they had a God that created all the other gods. He can't do it. It's just he cannot admit that, because to admit that is to violate his entire religious belief, right? To admit that the Egyptians worshipped a creator God that created all the other gods would be to violate his entire religious foundation. So he can't do it. It's like there's no way he's going to. But the fact is that this is the truth. The Egyptians had a creator god, Atum. Atum was the creator god of Egypt. Now, they had different names for the creator god at different times depending on who the ruling class was and where they were from. When Yamos took over in the New Kingdom in around 1550, the chief god of the pantheon became Amun. And of course, we're all saying Amen today. And of course, the Muslims are also saying Amen at the end of their prayers. Because Amen, you end your prayer with Amen. Because you're praying to Amen, who is the creator God. Now, Amen was the god of Thebes, right? But when Yamos became the supreme king of all of Egypt, of the north and the south and the central part of Egypt, and the entire kingdom, he ruled everything. He united the whole kingdom. There was a new kingdom. And he took over Canaan, where the Israelites had come from and where they went back to. Right? He took that. That belonged to Yamos. Before they established the kingdom of Israel, that was the territory of Egypt. Now, it wasn't before okay, but when the Hyksos ruled Egypt, that could have been the territory of Egypt then too, but it was under Hyksos control, I believe. I don't have anything to verify that with in history, but I believe because they came from that territory, you had all those dynasties ruled by the Amorites, and the Hyksos were part of that Amorite race, and they came down and took northern Egypt. So they literally had everything from Mesopotamia through Syria, the entire Fertile Crescent, down through Canaan, and all of northern Egypt. Then when Yamos came to power, he took back all of Egypt, including the southern part, which was outside the control. That someone else was ruling that at the time. There were three kingdoms. They had the middle part, and then the southern part, and the northern part. He took back everything, and he took back Canaan. So now Canaan was under Yamos. And of course, because he was from Thebes and the god of Thebes was Amun, now Amun became the supreme deity. So Amun is now the creator god. Amun was known as the hidden one. But, before that, you had Atum, and Atum created the other gods. And all the other gods were the sun and the stars and the moon and the wind and the rain and the water and the oceans and the sky. So that was all created by Atum before that. So Atum, and what do we call in Greeks? What do the Greeks call the basic unit of matter? It's called an atom. The world is made of atoms. The world is made of atoms because Atum is the creator of the universe. Now, so what are we saying? So the Egyptians already had a creator god. They already had the one god that created all the other gods. The one god who created all the other gods was Atum before Amun. And before that, I believe it was either pronounced Ta, but more likely Yepta. Yepta. I think it's that. That's just what I believe. I believe it was pronounced Yepta. Well, because you get the word Egypt from Yezhept, and then the Greeks called it Egyptus. So it's a word that evolved, right? So that's why they called it Egyptus, and so it became Egypt. And so I'm thinking it was originally probably Yepta, because the Egypt is from Ta, Epta. So Egypt, I think it was originally Yepta or something along that line. I could be wrong about that, but you'd have to figure that one out yourself. But when it was Yepta or Ta or however you pronounce it, he was the creator god. So the creator god has different names over time. Yahuwah or Yahweh, well, he's the creator god of the Jews, right? And the Muslims are calling the creator god Allah. That's what they're calling it. They're just calling it something. Because the creator god is the creator god is the creator god, and there's been the creator god in all these different religions. Okay? Not so much in the Babylonian Enuma Elish story, because there were like multiple gods that created the world. But if you look at like the Vedic belief system, it boils down to the same thing: is that there's basically one kind of deity that manifests in these different infinite manifestations. We're not going to go into the Far East. But Egypt is important because Egypt is part of the story. But you can't get a Muslim person to admit that the Egyptians worshipped a creator god. Yes, they made it into an idol. Everybody did that. It was just the Jews who said don't do that because they started a new religion. They were leaving Egypt. They weren't Egyptians. They needed their own thing. Now everybody says, we're the Israelites, and I'm the Israelites. And we got the Christian identity Israelites, and the black Hebrew Israelites, and the Teutonic Israelites, and you got the Ashkenazi Israelites, and you got the, who else? The Muslims are saying that all the prophets of Israel are really their prophets. Well, bull. I'm not going to use the word. They're not your prophets. They're prophets of these other people. They were Aramaean people. Okay, that's the easiest way to explain it. They were, Deuteronomy, I think it says, or is it Deuteronomy? My father was a wandering Aramaean, somewhere in there. My father was a wandering Aramaean. They were Aramaic nomads, okay? But they were a specific tribe. They weren't the other tribes that they weren't part of. They were their own thing. You got to look at things as they are, and because they were so tribal, and because so many people came to realize that their idea of God was, I guess, better than what they had. People look at, well, Zeus wasn't really, Zeus is obviously, Zeus was the Greeks' idea of the creator god, right? Or the god that created. No, there's a little bit of a genealogy of the creation of Zeus. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know who's the god that was like the great grandfather of Zeus. I can't remember the name right now. But there was a god, and then that god created Zeus, and Zeus created these other gods, and there's like a whole genealogy to it. Well, there was a genealogy to Egypt too, but it was a little more clear in Egypt that there was a creator god that created all these other gods, which were the sun and the moon and the stars and the wind and the rain and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So that's the idea of the creator god. So now the Israelites, they came to worship Yahuwah as the creator God. They just thought it was the creator God, but because it was their story, it was mythologized around them, and it was a story about them and how God cared about them. You see what I mean? Because it was about them. It was their book about God. It wasn't the Egyptians' idea of God. It's their book about God, and it's not the Arabs' idea about God, and it wasn't the Greeks' idea about God. Okay, it was their ideas. So people liked their ideas, and they incorporated it into their culture, which is fine. I'm just saying, other religions had a creator God, okay? So you're not the first person to have a creator God, and this is why they really have a false understanding of God. So they really have a false God because they think it's the thing that they call it. And it's not just the Muslims doing that. The Christians, you got people that say God's name is really Yahuwah. You know, that's his name. That's his personal name. No. We're describing something called the creator. We have this idea that there's a spiritual dimension that's creating the universe. Okay? It's not a guy with a name. It's not a guy that dictates books. The stories of Moses going to the mountain and getting the book and having it written in stone, that's a story. That's a story. And that's a story that men came up with. That does not mean that there's not a creator God. That does not mean that there's not a spiritual dimension creating the universe, because there is. I've made other videos about that, which describes it pretty specifically. So you can watch those. But so don't think of God as a guy. There's like some guy somewhere that you're going to meet, because that's not how it is. It's a dimension of thought. That's the dimension that's causing this universe to come into existence. I've covered that in other videos. The universe is the collective mind of thought, which is something you're part of. Spiritual. It's a spiritual dimension. So it's not even really, but they're trying to think of it in terms of there's one thing, right? Well, there's kind of a oneness idea, but that you can't think of it in mathematics. Like we're all from this thing, right? So it's kind of like a zero, but it's also infinite because it has like an infinity calculation to it. But you can't really think of it in terms of mathematics. You can't really think of it in terms of one, although you can, but you can't. You can think of it that way in mathematical terms, but it's not limited to mathematics. So you know once you start, how many gods are there? And you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could say it's really a zero and an infinity, and that's the spectrum, 0 to infinity. But it's definitely not a one thing somewhere else, like he lives on a mountain or he lives in the sky. That's a false god. Now, that's how it was depicted in ancient religions and in the Bible, and those are false depictions. But that does not mean that there's not a creator God. The spiritual dimension is very real. So, anyway, the Egyptians had a creator God. Now the Sikhs, I was making this point the other day, the Sikhs came to become monotheists without stealing the stories of Israel. In other words, they said, well, yeah, we're monotheists. We believe that there's a creator God, and that's the one God that created all the other gods, or created all the people, or created the universe, if you want to put it that way. Because in the old world, the universe, different parts of the universe, those were the gods. The moon, the sun, the stars, the water, the earth. Those were the gods. So the Sikhs said, yeah, there's one creator God, and he created all the world, and so we're monotheists, they said. But then they didn't say, and Abraham this, and Jesus that, and the prophets of Israel this, because those aren't their prophets. They're worshiping the creator God in their way. The Sikhs are. See, that makes more sense. Worship the creator God in your way, of your culture. You know, that's the other thing is, you get these people of different cultures, and now they're speaking Arabic. In Syria, they spoke Aramaic up there. Or, you got people in Europe or in Indonesia, and they're bowing towards Mecca. Well, you're not Arab, so don't do that, right? You're an Indonesian, or you're European, or whatever you are. Worship the Creator. If you want to worship the Creator the way your people does. You don't have to take on someone else's culture. It's kind of like, your culture can worship the Creator just the same as any other culture. It's just people became so convinced about the stories of the Israelites to the point where they abandoned that they thought that that was the only way they could worship the Creator. Well, the Creator is the Creator. It's not limited to the Israelites. The Israelites wrote their books on the way they defined it, and they're really good, and they're good books, and they're impressive, and they've got some really good philosophy in there. And so that was very, that was very impressive to people. They were amazed by the beauty and the logic of the separating of the Creator from the world and seeing it in a different way. And that's why it was so popular, and that's why they looked at on their own gods as it wasn't just the Israelites that did this though. The Greeks did this in Greece before people converted to Christianity in Greece. They had already abandoned the old gods. Socrates and these other philosophers, they abandoned the old gods because they said, "What do I need? What do I need Zeus for if I'm immortal?" You see how that works? What do I need Zeus for if I'm immortal? If I have an immortal soul? The Greeks already figured this out before Christianity. They had already figured it out before Christianity. The same ideas that the Jews were abandoning the pagan gods, the Greeks were already abandoning the pagan gods before they were involved with the Jews in any way. They had already done this. This had been going on for hundreds of years. So in Europe we really did not get our religion. Originally, we did not get our religion and our idea of abandoning false gods. We didn't get that from the Jews. We got that from Pythagoras, who said, "I'm an immortal being. What do I need? What do I need these other gods for? This is mythology. I got the real thing within me." And of course, that merging with the books of the Old Testament came about this new Christian philosophy, which then everybody forgot about Greek philosophy. I've done another video on that, but that's what happened. So that's the moral of the story. And hope that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, I'll keep trying. All right, take care.